I'm used to survival horror dropping me into the usual American backlot. Same suburbs, same research labs, same conspiracy flavor. Cronos the New Dawn does something I didn't expect. It plans the apocalypse in Kraków. You play a traveler sent to extract the essence of specific people related to the events that happened, diving through the time rifts to the early 1980s Poland and picking your way across a destroyed district Nowy Świt, which translates to New Dawn, that looks and feels like Nowa Huta, an actual Kraków district that was inspiration for the game world. Under snow and propaganda posters, the city is bleak, but it's also personal. Walking stairwells in communist prefab blocks, stepping into cramped kitchens with meblościanka furniture, which is kinda wall unit, spotting old toys, and even that classic Polish vacuum cleaner. I remember my mom had one when I was little, only that she had an orange one. That connection makes the horror land harder. This isn't just somewhere out of there. It's, at least for me, familiar streets twisted by something called the change. A catastrophe, a terrifying event that turned people into orphans. Cronos is a survival horror in the practical old-school sense. Scarce ammo, meaningful healing, tight arenas, obscure corridors, some puzzles but not too many at all, and no patience for Rambo play. The combat reads like a blend of Resident Evil and Dead Space. With one sharp twist that defines the whole game: burn the bodies. If you leave corpses on the floor, nearby enemies can merge with them, literally fusing flesh into a stronger, nastier variant in a grotesque looking process. Let it happen twice and you are suddenly dealing with a bullet sponge wearing improvised and thick skin-like armor plates. And the enemy will be vulnerable only in weak spots. That single rule, don't let them merge, changes how you fight, how you plan roads, and when you dare to linger. It's also where the game's stress comes from. If you are sloppy with crowd control, 2 throwaway enemies can snowball into a mini-boss you hadn't collected ammo for. But at the same time, if you keep enemies from fallen friends, it's not that problematic. I think that the whole merging idea is more of a marketing idea. I only had a few times a solid problem with enemies merging with other ones. Other times I somehow managed to be fine. Yes, it took me more bullets, but if you will focus on dealing damage in their weak spot, you are fine. Enemy variety helps sell the setting. You've got shambling baseline orphans, exploders, wall sleepers that tear out from the biomass, and heavier tanks that soak your magazines dry. Also, there are like spider ones that crawls on walls and ceilings. Plus, they shoot acid at you. Not all enemies can merge, but enough of them do that, so you start thinking like a firefighter. Clear a room, triage threats, light the pile, move on. However, to be realistic, in many locations, if you eliminate enemies, they don't going to respawn again. So it's safe to not focus on burning all the bodies before you're going to move to next location. Especially that you can hold a very limited number of fuel needed to burn them. Boss fights push that logic further. If you brute force them, you will waste half of your backpack or even a whole backpack and they still will be fully alive. If you use the environment, gas canisters, exploding barrels, choke points, you can tip the odds back in your favor. It's rarely elegant, but it stands. Weapons are deliberately limited and honestly that's the point. You will find 7 in total with 1 optional pick, and most share ammo families, 2 pistols, 2 shotguns, 2 rifles, plus the late game wildcard. Every gun has upgrade paths for power, max size, reload speed and a charge short specialty. That last one matters. I run most of the games on the starter pistol because its charged shot hits like a truck without gassing shells, which saves me stack of ammo across hours. And trust me, you want to save ammo. You can reset weapon upgrades at traveler stations for a fee, which is smart, respectful design choice. It invites you to try a new weapon without feeling trapped by sunk cost. That said, not every weapon earns a spot. Some feel tuned for styles I don't play, and the economy is tight enough that experimenting still carries risk. Inventory is where Cronos gets stubborn, maybe too much. You start with painfully small number of slots, and while you can expand your suite with rare cores to add health, resources, capacity and those important extra slots, it never feels like enough. Ammo stacks are tiny. Think 15 rounds per pistol, 5 shells per shotgun, 30 per rifle slot. So if you are not carefully enough, your bag gets empty fast. Add heals, fuel for burning bodies, quest key and tools like the bolt cutter you will need for chained doors. And you're constantly making cold decisions, leave a medkit to carry rifle around, dump extra shells to keep and store item. In theory you can stash tools at safe rooms and fetch them from any other safe room thanks to a shared chest. In practice, the moment I put the cutter away, I ran into chained doors 2 corridors later. I started carrying it all the time and ate the slot stacks. The capacity of collected resources can be expanded and is very helpful. In the game there are 2 types of resources, chemicals and metal scraps. From using this you can craft ammo, healing items or fuel for a torch to burn bodies. On multiple occasions I found some of those when I was full of them. So I used them to craft ammo or healing, which was helpful anyway. The result is a loop that's authentic to the genre. Careful, deliberate, heavy, but also occasionally tedious. Late game I spent a lot of time jogging back to save rooms just to offload valuables or force a manual save before a big patch because autosaves can be cruelly placed. Pacing wise, the campaign is linear in structure, which fits the story. Every hours work like a grounded survival run, tight apartments, ambushes from the walls, those first few shocking murders when you forgot to burn a corpse. The deeper you go, the more the mood shifts. Anomalies tug you into the past, time rifts reframe scenes you tough you understand, and the horror leans more psychological and what did I just see than pure monster closets. It's a smart escalation. Action ramps up toward the end, bigger groups, bigger arenas, higher tier merges, but the narrative actually narrows and tightens. I won't spoil specifics, but the design steadily moves from shoot the thing to this place remember us. And that's where Cronos steps out of its influences and feels like its own thing. On fun side you can find cats. Yes, cats. I don't know how they can survive, but in the game there are 10 cats you can find and they will stay in your outpost safe room in one location. You can pet them and finding them is also rewarding as they often drop rare items or even key items to some locations. Let's talk feel and friction. On normal difficulty the game isn't brutally hard if you play cautiously. I died maybe half a dozen times across 20 plus hours and a couple of those were me being greedy. Players who push too aggressively will spend more time on load screens and I understand why some reviewers call it punishing. Autosaves can lock you into nasty loops if you enter a fight low on ammo and refuse to backtrack. The flashlight is also on the game's terms. It toggles automatically, flickers when the designers want tension and refuses to turn out in dim but not dark rooms. It's a classic horror trick and it works, but sometimes you will wish you had a manual control. Performance is a mixed bag. The Unreal Engine 5 visuals do a great job selling retrofuturist tech grafted onto Eastern Bloc brutalism. Thick concrete, frozen breath, blue lamps, snow chewing at the edge of collapsed stairwells. But the frame rate can wobble. I had noticeable hitches when the game streamed in new areas, a few stutters during big fights. Updating GPU drivers helped and dialing back a couple of heavy settings brought me to a steadier 50-ish FPS, but the optimization still needs a pass. It's not a deal breaker, it's just a reminder you are playing a fresh 1.0 that will likely run smoother after a patch or two. What elevates the experience, at least for me, is the cultural specificity. Seeing 1981 Poland, state banners, kiosks, buses, the winter holiday decorations used as a canvas for sci-fi body horror is both unexpected and strangely intimate. There are details locals will clock immediately, old cars of that era, buildings and the whole vibe, but the overall picture is convincing and evocative. One moment sticks with me, an orphan, not hostile, sitting by a creep and tending to it. Cronos keeps suggesting that small fragments of humanity still linger in these creatures. It isn't subtle, but it's effective and it lands because the world around them feels lived in. There are bugs for sure. I had one progression hiccup at an interactable squeeze-through gap that refuses to trigger on the way back, forcing me to take a long road. Once a loot pickup popped onto a shelf during an explosion, and the game wouldn't let me grab it, even while I was clearly in range. Occasionally enemies clip on doors or peek through walls. None of that killed my run, but it didn't chip away at the polish. So where do I land? As a Polish person, the setting alone nudges my personal score up. For me and me only, it's an 8.5 out of 10. But that's for me, with a real chance to hit a 9 if the devs clean up performance and few pain points. Stripping out the nostalgia and with more universal view, I'd call it a solid 8 out of 10. A moody, system-forward survival horror with one cool central mechanic, monster merging, and a setting we don't see enough in the games. It's not relentlessly terrifying, it's tense and methodical and occasionally irritating when the inventory fights you. But when it all clicks, the careful routing, the decision to burn or risk it, the time rifts reveals, The way a drab stairwell suddenly tells a human story. Cronos, the new dawn, feels distinct. If you like your horror strategic and your world's thick with atmosphere, that's one worth the trip. Okay, that's it today. Subscribe for more. Until next time. Bye.